Hey, what is up, you guys? This is Braden, Sharksicle Gaming, coming at you here with another deck tech. This time, Ruric Thar, the Unbowed. So, for those of you that don't know, he is a 6 mana, green red, 6/6. He's the Gruul clan chief back in Ravnica. Ogre Warrior. He's got Vigilance and Reach, and he attacks each turn if able. And if any player casts a non-creature spell, he deals 6 damage to that player. For any green piece out there that is not commander damage is combat damage only. So don't build him thinking that you're going to get away with some cheeky wins like that. But 6 mana, 6/6 Vigilant Reach is not bad to begin with. And then, how do we maximize or break not casting non-creature spells? So we do that by having very, very few of them. In the entire deck, we've got a Garrick, Caller of Beasts, because he can fetch up creatures with his +1. We've got Fires of Yavimaya to give all of our creatures haste. And we've got Praetor's Council to return all creatures from the graveyard to the hand and give us no maximum hand size. And lastly, we've got Defense of the Heart. I'll put a timestamp here, but if you look at my Dagatar the Adamant deck, this card just carries. I put it in almost every deck that I have that has green. It allows me for 4 mana to fetch up two creatures and put them onto the battlefield, as long as somebody else has 3 or more creatures at the beginning of my upkeep. So super, super great card. It doesn't even say that it's more creatures than me. I can still be even with them and still go ahead and get ahead of them at that point. So that's all of the non-creature spells that we run in the deck, which means that we have a vast, vast majority of our cards that are creatures. Now, how do we now overcome the restriction that is placed upon us? Well, we'll do that by having creatures that have enter the battlefield abilities, and those combined with creatures that have like spell-like abilities basically means that we're allowed to play spells in the deck without playing non-creature spells in the deck. Elvis Visionary allowing us to draw a card. Grave Sifter, I can choose a creature type and return any number from the graveyard to my hand. This deck on the low end does have an elf tribal theme to go along with the ramp package that's in it. If you guys have seen me do deck techs before, you know I talk about packages. I don't talk about creatures versus non-creatures versus yada yada. In this instance, I did include the non-creatures over here, but only just because that's a specific interest of this deck. But typically, I won't break them out like that. I will talk about packages and what things go in the deck for what reasons. Grave Sifter here allowing me to get all my elves back, or beasts, or whatever, elementals. There's a couple that we can choose from. Tornado Elemental, 6 damage to each creature with flying when it enters the battlefield, and it can assign its combat damage as though it wasn't blocked. Gruul Rage Beast, have him fight a creature an opponent controls whenever he or another creature enters. So 7 mana 6/6 isn't incredible, but 7 mana 6/6 that's a kill spell, and then turns every other one of my big creatures into kill spells. Absolutely. Fanaticus Xenagos, 3 mana 3/3 trample. Either he has haste and +1/+1 this turn, or he's got +1/+1 for the rest of the game. I mean, easy peasy. Genesis Hydra, also in my Dagatar deck for the counters, but in this instance, allowing me to start getting elves. That's typically the best way to do that, is to cast him for like 4 or 5 and flip over an elf. Although, man, if you can cast him for like 9 and flip over a Tornado Elemental, that's not a bad gig either. Wanvuli Beast Tracker, searching for a creature card with Death Touch, Hexproof, Reach, or Trample, and put the card on top of my library. And then Reclamation Sage, he's an elf for the elf tribal element, and he gets to destroy an artifact or enchantment without using up a non-creature spell slot. Inferno Titan, when he enters the battlefield or attacks, he deals 3 damage as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and/or players for a 6 mana 6/6, and he has a fire breathing passive. So super, super huge there. Now let's talk about some of that elf tribal package, and this will have a lot of overlap with the ramp package that we have in here, but I'm going to keep it simple in the cards that specifically ramp versus the cards that specifically may care about elves. So Jiraga Warcaller, 1 mana 1/1. He's got the multi-kicker. He can enter the battlefield huge. And for each counter that's on him, my other elves get +1/+1. Even if you cast him for 3 mana, give every other elf just +1/+1. Still very, very impactful in this deck. Moldiah Channelers, 3 mana 2/2. Plays with the top card of my library revealed. As long as it's a creature card, he gets +3/+3, so he's a 3 mana 5/5. And if the top card's a land card, then he can tap for 2 mana of any one color. So literally no downsides to this guy. Gyre Sage gives me green for each +1/+1 counter on him. There's not a ton of ways to do that in the deck, but there's just a couple, and it ends up being worth it if I can even put one on him. And the evolve way to do that is really the best way, right? 2 mana 1/2. Next thing you know, you play a 1/3 or a 2/2, or you know what I mean. And then all of a sudden, he just starts getting bigger and bigger. Masked Admirers and Foil. This is a 4 mana 3/2. When he enters, I draw a card, and anytime I cast a creature spell, I could pay green, and if I do, bounce them from my graveyard to my hand. So some easy recurring draw there. Fierce Empath, 3 mana 1/1. When he enters, I can search for my library for a creature card with a CMC 6 or greater, put it in my hand, reveal it obviously, put it in my hand, and then shuffle. Eladamri, this is definitely a sleeve playable Eladamri. He's seen better days, but 2 mana 2/2. All elves have Forest Walk, and they all have Shroud. Big Well-Wisher, 2 mana 1/1. Tap, gain 1 life for each elf in play. Advocate of the Beast. At the beginning of my end step, put a +1/+1 counter on target beast creature I control. Essence Warden, when he enters the battlefield, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, gain a life. It's an elf. And Azuri Renegade Leader, 3 mana 2/2. Pay 1 green to regenerate another target elf, so not work on himself, but 5 mana other elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and trample till end of turn, so that's big. And then Glade Cover Scout, 1 mana 1/1 elf scout. He's hexproof. You need some of that lower end stuff in here. Let's talk about the rest of the ramp package before we talk about some of the big creatures that you just want to stick on the battlefield, the guys that you need to hang around. We've got a Kirin Explorer. Tap to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Priest of Titania. Tap to add green for each elf on the battlefield. Sky Shroud Elf. Tap for green. Pardon me. Or you can add white or red for 1 mana, so you can filter. Elvish Mystic, obviously. Kirin Elves, choose a color, so red and green, 2 mana 1/1, but then you have the choice of not just green, but red and green. Burning Tree Emissary, I like that because he's hybrid mana, I can't get mana screwed out of him, and then when he enters I can add those 2 colors. He's not an elf, but that mana ramp is huge. Same deal here. Goblin and Archomancer, 2 mana 2/2. Each spell you cast that's red or green cost 1 less to cast. Big. Zerta Druid taps for green, and whenever you tap, he deals 1 damage to each opponent. Llanowar Elves, I happen to have this nice little revised one here. And then Elvish Archdruid, other elves you get +1/+1, and then he's got the same effect as the other one where you can tap to add green for each elf you control. So that's the elf tribal package. That's how we ramp up. That's how we cast Ruric Thar on turn 3 or 4 rather than on turn 6, so that we can start going ahead and locking down the board with the superior creature base that we have. Not all these are absolutely phenomenal, and I would be definitely open to suggestions on putting some other things in. I try and keep my decks around a power level 5 or 6 because that's the one I have the most fun playing. I like the longer games and stuff, but obviously I'm sure there's a lot better creatures that could be put in this. I know a Ragavan and yada yada, right? But Kurgadon here, 5 mana 3/3. Whenever you play a creature spell with CMC 6 or more, put 3 counters on him, so he can very quickly become a 5 mana 6/6 after just 1 creature, and then he's a 9/9 and a 12/12, right? Thunderfoot Baloth, as long as you control your commander, he gets +2/+2, and other creatures you control +2/+2 and trample. That's huge. Nylea, God of the Hunt, devotion to green is less than 5. He's not a creature, but other creatures you control have trample. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn for 4 mana, and that does not once per turn, so I can continue to do that if I want to. And then he's of course a 4 mana 6/6 indestructible, provided I can turn him on. Spellbreaker Behemoth, 5 mana here, or 4 rather, 5/5, 4 mana 5/5. Spellbreaker Behemoth can't be countered. Green creature spells you control with power 5 or greater can't be countered, so that starts to become huge. Hamlet Bat Goliath, I wish I had the promo art version of this. Back in 13 they were selling these at Walmart with a promo art that was just all over the place, and I just can't seem to find one. I need to buy it. It's probably 10 cents. 7 mana 6/6. When another creature enters, you can put X counters on him, where X is that creature's power. Huge. Toski, I've got me a foil Toski. So he can't be countered. He's indestructible. He attacks each combat, and any creature you control deals combat damage to a player. Draw a card. Massive. Garruk's Pack Leader. If another creature power 3 or greater enters the battlefield, you may draw a card under your control, obviously. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can put a +1/+1 counter on the plant here. Colonian Hydra, I keep referencing my Dogatar video, but I like green. I like go big, right? So 5 mana, enters as a 4/4. Whenever he attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. So not only is he a threat because he has trample, and all of a sudden he's an 8/8 trample coming at you after 1 turn. Fires of Yavimais on the battlefield, that's that turn, right? But also, you know, whenever he attacks and doubles the counters, that can be on some of your other things. That could be on the Vine Lasher Kudzu. That could be on the Gyre Sage, and all of a sudden you're ramping for more mana than you'd expected. So that's pretty big. Ivy Lane Denizen, whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So I can choose any of those other ones. Gyre Sage, I can choose, you know, any of these. Primordial Sage, 7 mana. 6 mana, 4/5. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may draw a card. Big. Silklash Spider. That is a 5 mana 2/7 with reach. You can pay X and 2 green to have him deal X to each creature with flying. Big. Barishi is a 4 mana 4/3. If he's put into a graveyard from play, remove him from the game and shuffle all creatures from your graveyard into your library. When the deck is mostly creatures, that's huge. Paleoloth, 6 mana 5/5. If another creature with power 5 or greater comes into play under your control, you get to bounce a creature from your graveyard to your hand. Soul of the Harvest, if another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Purphoros, God of the Forge, is a 4 mana 6/5 indestructible. Devotion to red, less than 5, he's not a creature. But if any creature enters the battlefield under your control, he deals 2 damage to each opponent. So big. And then I can pay 3. Creatures I control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Ruric the Hunt Caller, 4 mana 5/4, and then formidable at the beginning of combat on your turn. If creatures you control have power 8 or greater, target creature you control gains haste until end of turn. Wolfear Silverheart's a 5 mana 4/4 with Soul Bond, so when it or another creature enters the battlefield, you can bond with those until, as long as you control both of them, so you can have this guy bond with somebody. If that dude dies, you play another creature, you can choose to bond them again. Both of them get +4/+4. So this guy's, as long as you've got one other creature, and I don't care if it's a fucking Llanowar elf, if you've got one other creature, that's a 5 mana 8/8 right there. So big stuff there. Siege Behemoth, 7 mana 7/4 hexproof. If he's attacking, for each creature you control, you can have that creature assign their combat damage as though they weren't blocked. Savageborn Hydra is a red, green, and X. For a double strike, he enters with X counters on him, and you can pay 1 and a green-red hybrid to have a +1/+1 counter put on him. You can only activate that at any time you could activate a sorcery. Again, with Colonian Hydra, that's huge. Also double strike, you know, I mean, and then you give him trample with some of my other spells in here. It starts to get kind of scary. Apocalypse Hydra, same deal here. This would be a red, green, and X, and then he comes into play with X counters on him. If X is 5 or more, double that. And then you can pay 1 and a red to remove a counter from him and have him deal 1 damage to a creature or player. Polis Crusher, 4 mana 4/4 trample, proc enchantments, monstrosity 3, so I can make him monstrous. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, if you're monstrous, destroy target enchantment they control. So this is just a Rex Sage on a stick, pretty much. Lifeblood Hydra is expensive, 3 and an X, but when he enters with that counters on him, and then when he dies, gain life and draw cards equal to his power. You know, again, if you're adding counters onto that, it just gets scarier and scarier. I've got me a Foil Soul of Zendikar here, 6 mana 6/6 reach, with 2 nice abilities for mana sinks later. Whenever I have all of the elves out, you know, you can exile them from a yard, put a 3/3 beast, or you can pay 5 and put a 3/3 beast onto the battlefield. Garruk's Horde, play with the top card of your library revealed. You can cast it if it's a creature. Fastwood Hydra, when he dies, you get to put the counters that were on him among any other creatures you control. Dirkwood Ballast, probably one of the weaker cards in the deck, but suspend 5, you can pay 1 and get this guy out 5 turns later. Or you can just play it as a 6 mana 5/5. He's a beast. A lot of my things have power 5 requirements or CMC 6 requirements, so he just kind of fits those slots. And then Abzan Beastmaster and Foil Promo Art, 3 mana 2/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you control a creature with the greatest toughness or tied for the greatest toughness. So, you know, again, just trying to make sure that I've got the economy on creature spells and that all of my creature spells have non-creature spell-like abilities so that I don't really suffer from not being able to play them. As far as the land base goes, 1, 2, 3, 8 forests. I'm sorry, mountains, 8 mountains. 16 forests. For non-basic, I've got a Gruul Guildgate, Shivan Oasis. I've got a Nykthos in here, obviously lots of pips. There's also abilities to untap lands you control. Mossfire Valley, tap to filter land, basically. Opal Palace, casting your commander, he enters with +1/+1 counters. Not Vold Slumber Mound, this is a new addition, but I can pay mana and sack it to create a 4/4 Troll Warrior. Rootbound Crag is the check land. Carplucin Forest is the pain land. Temple of Abandon is the Scryland. Wirewood Lodge untaps target elf, so that's massive. Highland Weld is the snow tapped land from back in Ice Age. I'm sorry, Cold Snap? Cold Snap, I think. Kazandu Refuge is the life gain land, and then Gruul Turf is a bounce land. So lots of double mana sources, even though I overwhelmingly have the green mana sources here. Got plenty of hybrid there. So, you know, again, just get Ruric Thar out as quick as possible. Put your ramp in there. Go fast. And then as soon as possible, start just drawing cards off of your creature abilities. You know, locking down the board with your creature abilities. Like a lot of my decks at this power level, they're very creature based. You know, they're not designed to do anything crazy, janky, or broken. If your commander's not on the battlefield, your deck's probably not functioning exactly the way you'd expect it to, so he dies. The deck dies to removal and all that. But the nice thing about Ruric Thar is he's got the built-in protection of, that's fine, you can kill me, but as long as you've let me cast it, if you are killing it, you're going to be taking 6 damage just to remove it. And I promise you I will ramp up fast enough to where I can get back to that extra 2 mana and go ahead and cast him again and make you do it all over again. And by the time you realize that you're down to 20 health and I've got, you know, 26 power worth of trample on the board, and it's just going to happen. So he's fun. He's a little bit oppressive. It's almost like a weird little Staxy deck in red-green, but I'm not leaning into that territory anymore. I could probably be leaning into it a lot more and building around that element of it and making it feel very Staxy, but that's just not my style of play. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments, like suggestions for creatures you think would go really good in it, I'm really just looking for red-green value. Bonus if it's a good elf, or even if you guys would go so far as to list a direct replacement. Oh, this one is strictly better. This one, constantly looking for those in these decks. So just let me know. And if you would leave me a like and go check out some of my other videos, I'll leave a link here in the end tag. But thank you guys so much for checking this out. Have a great day.